Uh, okay. Hello, my name is Tony, and today we're going to talk about my final project, which is a topic that I think I'm really quite interested in specifically law and law writing. And the topic here today would be, how is grammar different between law people and normal people? Okay. So in any formal empirical research paper, English grammar is an essential tool to communicate or even just present one's main thesis. That is why the usage of grammar can differ from different contexts. So for example, in our daily conversation, we may not pay attention to the usage of grammar. However, in some cases, misuse or misunderstanding of English grammar can cause huge consequences we cannot imagine. For example, the law writing that we're talking about today, if any misuse of punctuation or even just like a slightly different structure, a grammar structure of, let's say, a bill in the court could actually varies differently, which is why we are going to talk about specifically punctuation here today, and see the similarity and differences in law and in normal conversation. So for normal conversation here, we also include regular college level empirical academic papers that are not specifically targeting on English grammar. So like any paper besides that, the papers are like specifically talking about English grammar here. The punctuations are not usually a big concern other than serving the purpose of separating sentences and paragraphs or following the basic grammar rules such as comma, separating the clauses with a conjunction. That is like the most common punctuation we see and most often used in any paper. This holds true for all legal writing. In addition, it also serves the purposes of signaling extra information is being added to the sentence. So if a very long sentence, we usually divide them with the commas. Maybe in any normal paper, it's just like we just divide the sentence. They may not have any priority over the other structure, or they may, but like not strictly restricted by the commas. But in any like law writing here, that extra information, depending on how it's phrased, could be considered as either an essential condition related to the main sentence or not. So if we look at examples provided by the Writing Center at Georgetown University of the Law Center, which should be here, we can see the comma here divides the sentence into two parts, one main part and the other extra information, which is not so suggested or emphasized by the speaker. The plaintiff filed his reply brief, which was longer than the court rules permitted. And the second sentence, the court held for the plaintiff, finding that the defendant's explanation was not credible. So here, in these two data that we see here, I'm going to add this just to make the sentence a little bit complete. The comma here is started by a sentence which was longer than the court rules permitted. It is a condition. It is, however, not an essential or necessary condition to the sentence. The reason is because that we can see by eliminating the sentence here, it does not quite change the sentence itself. So it's just adding condition, which is like a little bit more detailed, which is, well, in this case, the condition that was added which was longer than the court rules permitted. The court held for the plaintiff, finding that the defendant's explanation was not credible. Finding that, whatever follows after finding that is a condition, is describing a situation of the entire court. The court is the court held for the plaintiff, so the court is the subject here. It is a kind of not so essential condition. It's basically talking about the credibility of the defendant's explanation here, which could be omitted, does not change the sentence entirely. However, here it's a little bit missing details, but still, the common use of here is suggesting that whatever follows is just a condition there. It could be omitted. Let's look at some usage of comma that that is quite necessary and cannot be omitted. Or in other way, we can say if it's omitted, the structure, the idea trying to deliver it by the sentence is being changed. So this is also the examples from the Writing Center at Georgetown University of Law Center, which will be a huge source we are going to rely on throughout the entire project. So the witness claimed that he, not the defendant, was driving the car. The judge, however, focused on the policy implications of the decision. So the comma here, not the defendant, because he here, even if without context, even though with the context, that he can be, may be represented as the witness or the defendant, which is not clear, therefore need a clarification. Otherwise, it will be a kind of like ambiguity or confusion in the sentence. So the witness claimed that he, not the defendant, suggesting that he's strictly talking about being the witness, not others, not like other people other than witness was driving the car, was doing these actions here. So if we omit this, it will create a confusion or ambiguity that maybe he being the other person, the defendant, or maybe other people. Second sentence, the judge, however, focused on the policy implications of the decision. Here we can say that, however, the conjunction here kind of like provides a twist to the sentence. If we just say like the judge focused on the policy implication of the decision, it does not satisfy the need of like saying that the judge, instead of doing other things, he chose to focus on policy implications of the decision. The context being provided by however and is kind of necessary throughout the entire sentence. Oops. Okay. So sometimes instead of adding information that simply explains the situation, we say that the comma actually twists the sentence. One typical confusion about the usage of the comma, for some reason it keeps doing that. Okay, one typical confusion about the usage of the comma is when listing parallel objects or things using commas to separate. In our normal academic paper, it is not a concern at all. In fact, some teachers would suggest that it does not matter at all. This usually takes place in high school English writing or AP English writing, or even some like introductory level of college English writing. However, in law writing, it would create confusions as people consider the object not being separated, not as parallel as others. So for example, look at the two data here. We have my estate is to be divided equally among my nephew, my son, my daughter, and my son-in-law with comma before and. The second sentence, my estate is to be divided equally among my nephew, my son, my daughter, and my son-in-law without a comma before an end. We see that it could create confusion as the term my daughter strictly before and my son-in-law here is not being paralleled with my son-in-law. So this might be saying like, oh, maybe your for the first sentence is clearly that the estate is divided by nephew, son, daughter, son-in-law. But the second sentence may create a confusion that the property is actually divided by nephew, son, daughter, actually nephew, son, daughter, and son-in-law, which somehow signals that my daughter and my son-in-law is being one party to share among my nephew and my son with the property. And well, that of course already created confusion and might create chaos as this is like actually not equally divided somehow. Given the context, it would vary differently, but still, the subjects that are being compared is not equally divided or like not parallel here. We can see that the mid of comma here actually create a huge difference over here. Another punctuation that we may see quite often, which is this, the last punctuation we're going to talk about, is actually the ellipsis. Which are usually represented by the dot, 3 dots. That's sufficient. Some people would choose to do 6 or even 8, which is redundant and unnecessary. The ellipsis in our academic paper is quite often used and normally would mean that there are many things that are omitted but obvious and unnecessary. So in paper, you would maybe a very straightforward, easy example would be my mom went to the grocery. She bought orange, apples, watermelons, and on and on and on. And here we can use ellipsis to omit the rest of the stuff that she bought from the grocery and is not unnecessary, as they're all just like representing fruits or vegetables that she purchased. It does no harm to our thesis or the paper itself. However, in legal writing, the overuse of ellipsis may suggest that one is abusing the authority and not respecting the audience and readers enough, and therefore may lose credibility to the readers. Oops. And if the ellipses are being over abused, say the court is trying to pass a bill, but the bill itself is quite ambiguous with the ellipsis, because the ellipsis often create confusion. Instead of like people know what you're saying in daily conversation, people in law actually like cares about what are you going to say. So normally we would see that any bill that's being passed is quite long and detailed. That is because they're not quite allowed to use ellipsis for to omit anything in the sentence, because anything could be necessary. There is just no such a thing that is being obvious and unnecessary. Of course, in the moral like level, there are, but by passing the law itself, we're more strictly serious on what things are being omitted, and therefore it's not appreciated. So we can see that punctuation law in normal people, punctuation in law people versus normal people would actually like differ a lot. Throughout the entire project, I find my sources mainly on the law center in Georgetown University, which is like a kind of well-known law center. They have like automatic ethos that I was really appreciating, and therefore I chose most of the data from them. I also while the other side that I'm compared is normal conversation, which is like the environment I myself is in, so therefore it's quite easy to actually give out data. So this is my project, and thank you very much.